Rob, great to see you. Thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. Always appreciate that because I know you're busy. I wanted to start the interview, sort of kick things off by asking you about something that you said to me when we were talking a few weeks ago. You said to me, and this is a really interesting point, given what you'll do. You said to me, we want to try and prevent suicide. Now, that's a bold statement, and I love a bit of ambition. I mean, if you can achieve that, that'll be have a big impact on the world. What did you mean by that, and how are you going to go about preventing suicide? Because that is a big ask. Give people that are listening a bit of a flavour for what you're up to and why that's important.
You're right, that is an absolutely phenomenal ask. But as you said, I think it's important to have big aspirations
Yeah.
and big dreams. And simply looking at the mental health status of patients across the UK and across the globe at the moment, suicide cases are on the increase. Self-harm is massively increasing as well. Even since year 2000, there's been like a 400% increase in mental health cases coming through, and in terms of self-harm as well. And it's these escalating steps towards suicidal ideation where we're really focusing in. So it's a very provocative statement to say we're going to stop suicide. We're preventing the incremental steps getting towards the suicide. So to give it a bit more context, what we're doing is trying to identify, to predict and prevent self-harm in individuals before they get onto this escalating scale, which can ultimately result in suicidal ideation and the act of suicide itself.
Before we get into that, sorry, can I just take one step back? Why do you think that sort of what sounds like very significant growth in you know those sort of problematic behaviors, that problematic, I mean, what is driving that in your view? Why are there more people wanting to and actually committing suicide? I mean, why is that number going up? I mean, what's going on there? Do you have a sense of that?
We're in the business of collecting data and intelligently interrogating all of the data that we can from patients
Yeah.
to try and answer this question with more clarity. I mean, as we know, from an economic standpoint and from the cost of living crisis through to what's been going on across the globe with all the multi problems that we have, these are all contributing factors. And everything that goes on in people's lives as well. Life's not easy.
No.
Everybody's under pressure, pressure to perform, pressure to deliver, pressure to pay the bills, pressure to look after the kids. And these things gradually sort of chip away. And why it's becoming more to the forefront now, that I think there's too many different moving factors to pinpoint any one thing down.
Right.
But what we're aiming to do is to try and collect more data from individuals with regards to their whole sort of life picture to try and find out what could be driving these things. Importantly, from a neuropath perspective, we know that there is an element of biology which can give us that
Right.
predictive score, which is why we're looking into the blood to try and pick up on these signals, which give us an 80% confidence score of being able to predict people who will be self-harming. The other environmental and personal and socioeconomic factors which are driving these behaviors are something that we need to unpick. And through the more intelligent capture of demographic data from all of the patients which we'll sample, we hope to have a better understanding of that question. And we also plan to serialize our test as well so that we could see different snapshots and points throughout people's daily lives and weeks and life events, which ones are having those specific inflection points or really putting out these behaviors. Also, what's really interesting, and from a lot of the conversations I've been having with all the bright young things which are coming up in the Cambridge area at the moment, is the advent of biosensors and how small we can make these things, and all the wearable devices which are coming out. How we can use these to pick up on new signals on what's being called like digital markers. I don't want to say digital biomarkers because it's either a biomarker or it's not. So these digital signals, and if we could start to make maybe some implantable devices to capture on a real time scale all of these different factors which are playing into people's lives. Are people feeling more depressed just because the weather's changed? What does that look like on their sort of mood and potentially on the biology behind all of this? Can we detect these things? And it's the culmination of all of these signals which we'll put together and analyze intelligently with with a neurological network to start putting together a better picture to really pick through that data and hopefully answer that question with much more clarity and detail.
Okay. So it's a complicated picture as to why people are increasingly, feeling suicidal or actually taking action to commit suicide. What you're saying is that's a complicated thing to understand. What is it? And I get that, but it's good that actually people are trying to understand that, because we're going to need a better understanding of that to be able to solve the problem. What exactly is your proposition about? Which bit of that, if you like, map of things that need to be addressed? What's the bit that you're focusing on? Just talk people through the bit that you're focusing on.
The bit that we're focusing on is trying to predict and get to patients preventatively before they
Right.
get to an escalation point of crisis, whereby they're self-harming to the extent that they then show up at A&E. Through lived experience of my friends' children who have been self-harming, they've
Right.
come home to discover that their children have been self-harming. They're there in the bathroom, and unfortunately they've been cutting themselves and they're dripping with blood, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. Everybody's in a panic. So they then take the kids to the GP and try and get through some conversations to understand what's driving these behaviors. But 13-year-olds don't always want to tell a stranger exactly what's going on in their life.
No.
And we want to be able to get to patients and identify them before they get to this stage of actually sort of
Yeah.
self-harm. So our proposition is to notice the changes in people's behaviors, in their moods
Right.
before they get to this stage. And again, with the data and what we can now see in the bloods combining with behavioral questionnaires as well, is to get a good predictive element as to the propensity and likelihood of someone getting to that self-harming stage, and or also repeatedly self-harming if they have done this once. And we'd also be able to use these markers as a way of assessing and quantifying the individual's response to ongoing therapy, such as CBT or antidepressants. These are bringing down those specific markers to re-regulate the brain biochemistry. So essentially, we're trying to be preventative rather than reactive, because at the moment, so many people slip through the net and just end up presenting at A&E through a crisis event, and that's exactly what we're trying to stop. It's all about prevention rather than reaction.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. I mean, if you can prevent people, I mean, that's cheaper and it's better, isn't it? Or it's a good thing all round. What is it? I mean, how do you mentioned your friend's children? I mean, what is it that kind of started you? I mean, how did you get onto this kind of journey? I mean, what was it that inspired you to invest all that time and energy and effort that you've put into to try and do this?
Absolutely. I was just having a catch up cup of coffee with a very good friend of mine one morning, and he's looking incredibly tired. So I just asking, what's up, what's been going on with you? And he'd literally been on the phone all night with his daughter, who lives away from him, trying to sort of console and comfort her as she's self-harming quite severely and on a very regular basis. And it seems to be escalating in severity each time she's doing this. So he'd been trying to talk to her and understand why she's doing this, how to deal with some of the feelings and sensations she's experiencing whilst self-harming. Sometimes the senses of elation of doing this, some sort of release. And as she lives away from him, he's pretty much living in fear that every time the phone rings, it's going to be, the worst news possible. So we got to talking about this, and potentially what is driving this sorts of behaviors around the biochemistry within the brain and neurological pathways which may be disrupted, driving her towards these sorts of behaviors, and what external factors as well, things which are going on in her life, and the culmination of all of these things which must be pushing her towards feeling this way and reacting the way that she
And you
does.
mentioned there a culmination of things. I mean, my interpretation is that it's so often it's not one thing; it's a mix of stuff that, if you like, pushes people towards the edge, isn't it? I mean, is that fair? That point?
Absolutely, yes. And I don't think anything to do with mental health is never black and white or very clear cut. It's all one huge, ever-changing shade of grey. And there's so many different aspects which go on within people's lives, even on a daily basis, even within an hour. Your emotions can be up, they can be down, things will happen.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
a bad email from your boss, the dog starts barking while you're having a meeting, and all of these things are contributing to the way that you're feeling. And it's an individual's ability, I think, sometimes to react, rationalize, and deal with these things, and I think there is definitely an element of biology going on behind this as well. One thing we'd really be interested in doing is looking at hereditary and any genetic factors which may be underlying here as well. But it's very difficult to identify exactly what's going on. Everybody's different. There's always a different story behind people. But again, if we can see within the blood that there are biochemical readouts to indicate people are on a specific pathway towards escalating towards crisis, and if we can combine that information with a brief behavioral check-in and sort of some questions to be asked in a more subjective manner, the important thing for us now is to combine objective data with that subjective data.
And I mean, that's a complicated exercise, it strikes me. How have you, I mean, how have you resourced this? I mean, how have you kind of, you know, I mean, you've made a decision to do something about the problem, which I think is a great thing, and you've come quite a way down the track to doing something about it. I mean, how did you resource all that? I mean, how did you pull it all together to, I mean, because it's a big jump from having a conversation with a friend and then investing your life in it and building a business around it. I mean, just talk us through that bit.
It certainly is. So after having that conversation with my friend, I was reading some papers to try and get some more information to support him and hopefully point him in the right direction for things which already exist in terms of support and therapies and
Yeah.
treatment. But unfortunately, I just uncovered a bigger grey area here that these things don't really exist and aren't really in place. From that, I then started looking more into how we could go around trying to make the right medicines and then treat the patients in this sort of case. But what became glaringly obvious is that we need to identify the patients in the first instance. And how did I resource all of this? I've it slowly over time just became an escalating sort of thing with more and more traction. It started off with a value proposition and a thought that, okay, if we've got these indications in the blood, we can screen these via a test and get this into the clinic so that when people do notice changes in their daughters or the kids, they can start to use this to have some sort of indication that they're on a progression. But to get there, I needed a whole lot of people around me, and it was in
That's
very
that was really what was behind my question is something as complicated as this. I mean, you're going to need a lot of expertise, aren't you? I mean, how did you find all the right? I mean, that sounds to me like quite a complicated exercise.
yeah. But I was very lucky to be introduced by an absolutely fantastic person called Rajan Jethwa, who in the very early days of the company, he would sort of put aside an hour of his time every couple of weeks because he's an incredibly busy guy. He's been very successful with exiting several companies. So he'd take time to sort of talk to me about the problem which I'm trying to solve, help me sort of soundboard some ideas which I was having, and having somebody of his caliber and expertise to dedicate their time to me meant the absolute world. Otherwise, I'm just one person sat at home with an existential crisis thinking, is this a good idea? Can this actually fly? But to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
somebody with the same credentials as Rajan to soundboard this against and to give it some credibility, show me that it is worth his time
Mm.
to have this conversation and encourage me to keep moving on. And it was really through those conversations with Rajan and his kindness to start connecting me with people within his network.
Right.
It's kind of like the sort of spider web effect or a cracking piece of glass. You know, it started with Raja and he introduced me to a couple of people. And from there, my
Yeah.
network has grown exponentially very, very quickly from there. But it all started with him.
Yeah. And so what are you building towards it in terms of, because you're looking at one aspect of this. I mean, and it's a very technical, scientific kind of area. I mean, what are you building towards? I mean, is it something that, people take a blood test and they go away and I mean, what is it you're building towards? How's it going to work?
So, as I previously described, some friends would take their daughter to the GP, and all they would have there would be like an 8 minute
Yeah.
subjective
Yeah.
conversation. The daughter sits there, doesn't want to tell a stranger what's going on in terms
Yeah.
of pressures with school, with everything else. So she sits with a smile on her face and says everything's fine. So it's a complete waste of time. Nothing happens. What we plan to do now is to somewhat remove that conversation, but move it to a digital check-in. So we'd have a tablet-based
Right.
device with
Okay.
10 to 15 behavioral questions based on mental health frameworks. We'd put a camera into the device so we can map the big five facial expressions as the individual's
Right.
filling it in. So we've got that behavioral snapshot and we can really get a good read on the individual. But more importantly, we're then going to combine this with a very simple point of care finger prick blood test, which can then screen the bloods for these chemicals, these biomarkers. And then we have an agentic AI system through a neural network, which can now complex together for the first time the objective data from the blood with the subjective behavioral data to give a more rounded assessment of the individual, to really take all that as much confusion and uncertainty
Yeah.
primary care conversation with the GP, and hopefully now empower them to make better decisions more quickly as they've got much more rounded data rather than a very quick subjective conversation with an individual. So this should enable the onward referral successfully.
So this is essentially a diagnostic tool that helps you work out the right way to move forward with somebody. You're not actually involved in actually doing the next bit. Is that right?
Correct. We're not involved in doing the next bit, so everything would be done at that point of care, check in with the clinician. However, we're not positioning this to take away any diagnostic power or determination from the GP. It's designed to enable them and to empower them by
Right.
giving more information within that quick 8-minute consultation to make more rapid decisions with an extra layer of data. But the final decision will come down to the GP. So we're not at all saying that this is
Yeah. So it's a tool to help the GP do their job better.
absolutely.
Yeah, and it will give them evidence, data, information that they can't currently access, presumably.
I must backtrack to say not to do their job better, but to enable them more because the GPs are doing absolutely
Yeah,
all
no,
they
that's what I meant. I mean, I wasn't saying they were doing a poor job. I'm saying it gives them a tool to help them do what they want to do more effectively, doesn't it?
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And
No.
then by serializing this test as well, we can sort of see and track and monitor remotely the individuals to see how they may be progressing over time. So, for example, if someone goes to the GP, they go through the test and it comes out that they are quite high risk of self-injury, and it's going to take a good couple of weeks to get them into the secondary care. We wouldn't want somebody to go away, go home, and slowly start escalating towards crisis silently. So if we can do the test remotely and every week or every 2 weeks, then the data goes right back to the GP, who could then have that remote monitoring. And if they can see escalation, then they can accelerate the patient's projection and trajectory to the secondary clinic and get them the help that they need sooner rather than later.
Mm. And that seems to me to be pretty important as well. It's not just the quality of the treatment, it's how quickly you get it, isn't it? And presumably this will create a boatload of data which will tell you new and useful things about, if you like, an accumulate in a method, at scale. Once you get lots of data in the system, you'll then be able to learn a whole load of other things, one presumes. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. And the utility of that data is, there's so many ways that we can employ this, and we've been fortunate enough to be approached by many companies who are very interested in the different utilities of this, and they can certainly see the value in Neuropath early on for things such as patient stratification and breathing life back into potentially failed MDD drugs that get to phase 2 or phase 3, whereby the correct cohorts of individuals
Yeah.
were available. We can now help find them. And we can also start to use this as a clinical intelligence tool as well to start utilizing that longitudinal data to identify new druggable targets to start re-regulating the neurological pathways associated to get the biochemistries back on track.
Mm. And let me ask you about the kind of the next bit of the journey, if you like. I mean, how do you feel about being a CEO and trying to build an organization to kind of get this delivered, if you see what I mean, to make this all happen? I mean, it's one thing to have an idea, it's another thing to get it all done. And you've got a huge ambition, which I love, but that means there's a lot involved in the next bit, if you see what I mean, isn't there? I mean, what's your feelings about that?
There's a huge amount of pressure which comes with it, and I don't think sort of being a founder or being a CEO is something one really chooses. I think it's something which sort of chooses you when the right time and the opportunity comes along. I am very cognizant in this role of where my strengths lay and the things which I know absolutely nothing about. And I've been making sure that going to as many networking events, talking to as many people as possible,
Mm.
who are always pointing me in the right directions and helping me have the right conversations to identify the best people who can fill in these knowledge gaps around me.
Mm.
So in terms of some of the technical development or some of the clinical validation work or the right types of financial advisors or commercial people. These are all things which, I know some things about, but I can't possibly do all of these. So I see my role really as being a connector and an enabler as well. It's I first of all identifying all these gaps which are going to be needed for the success of the company to move it forward,
Yeah.
but engaging with the most brilliant people that I can pull into the company and attract. And thankfully, through the mission which we're on for Neuropath and what we're trying to achieve, I've been overwhelmed by the amount of interest, and everybody's leaning into this. So
Mm.
I've really been able to pull some unbelievable talent to surround me in my close team to help me sort of build this out. So I see it as being one, as I said, of enablement and of apportioning the right work streams to the right experts.
That resource allocation, isn't it? I mean, what seems to me to be interesting is that I mean, because suicide is something that isn't particularly talked about. But it seems to me you've touched on something because so many people are willing to help, which means so many people must be concerned about the problem. But it's not something that you see discussed a lot, is it? So it's that's interesting that that's how people have reacted. I mean, what's your take on, I mean, it's a very positive reaction, but what's your take on why they're so supportive?
Yeah, precisely. And what's been really surprising to me, and it's always mixed whether you say it's surprising in a good way or in a bad way, but I would say, unfortunately, from everybody that I've had a conversation with about the value proposition for Neuropath and the mission that we're on, unfortunately, just about everybody I've spoken to has either been directly or somebody within the family of one of their very close friends has been affected by self-harm or by suicide. They can immediately relate emotionally to this because of the loss and from the pain which they've experienced through simply the lack of anything available in the existing healthcare system to have stopped or prevented these types of behaviors from happening or from keep occurring. And then they keep saying, if only there'd have been something like this
Mm.
when my friend was feeling the way they were, then we could have, stopped them, done something earlier before they just ended up at hospital or even worse. So you're right, it's an incredibly widespread. I don't know how you describe it, but it's incredibly widespread and it touches an inordinate amount of people. And why it's not more broadly discussed is a really good question. I think we're getting better at talking about our emotions and the way that we feel, but
Mm.
it's still something which a lot of people aren't comfortable in doing, in vocalizing how
Mm.
they feel when they're getting really close to like a crisis point or feel that they just can't carry on, and I should hope that there be more that we can do from Neuropath alone to start encouraging people to take more note of all of this and raising awareness. I mean, this is another huge part of what we're doing by trying to work with all the right advocacies to have groups to sort of promote this, get the awareness out there, talking to the charities to really promote awareness around this.
Yeah. I mean, what excited me about it when I heard when you talked about it when we were talking a while ago, the thing that I really liked about it is that I had, perhaps wrongly, I had just assumed that things like suicide and self-harming weren't really, you couldn't really prevent those things happening. You only got of found out about them when they started to happen. And the thing that excited me about it when I heard about it was that what you're saying is, well, actually, we can head that whole thing off potentially. So, it's that you go to the point, your earlier point about prevention. It had never particularly crossed my mind that this was a sort of thing that you could prevent. But what you're saying is actually there is a lot of potential there. You probably won't be able to do it 100%, but there's a lot of potential to prevent people ending up in a terrible place.
Absolutely, yes. And with the advent of AI, I think this is what's really fortuitous for me and for Neuropath as a company is that right now is the time that AI is really evolving and coming to its own. And it's the ability now to have AI in the background, which can now make the correlations and connections between these huge data sets because we've already established that it's not as simple as one or two little data points which are going to give you this indication of an assessment of a patient. There's lots going on in blood, there's lots going on in behavior, and lots of other elements as well, as we've already talked about with behavioral aspects, with conversational pieces, how they're potentially using their data devices and things like this. An individual can't possibly do all of this sort of assessment in their head, especially through having just a quick conversation. So this is where building the right types of AI frameworks can really now allow us to make these connections, look for those patterns, look for these predictive elements, and and help us into this way. The biology behind these types of comorbidities has always been there. These signals have always been in the blood. It's simply that technology hasn't been there to allow us to detect
Right.
them and to make sense of the data coming through. Because at the end of the day, if you look at these readouts from the blood, it's just numbers. And we just need something which is powerful enough to be able to connect and draw the patterns between all these numbers to give that predictive element. So absolutely, we should be able to predict these types of behaviors as the data and the evidence is already there. It's simply interrogating the right data, asking the right questions
Yeah.
to get to the right endpoint.
Yeah. And as we were talking about earlier on, I mean, asking the right questions is really important. You ask the wrong question, you get the wrong answer, don't you? Well, let me ask you about something you just touched on. There's all those things going on. I mean, it's a hugely complicated kind of context, if you like. I mean, how do you work out where to focus? I mean, one of the decisions that I think is always really interesting about building a company or a business or a charity or whatever is how do you work out what to do and what not to do? Which is, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. I mean, what's your feeling about how you navigate the kind of complexity that you've just been talking about?
Absolutely. And so just going back to the very early days when I was spitballing a lot of these ideas with Rajan, it's right, how do we go about? First of all, it's
Yeah,
asking who's going to use this? How are you going to use it? Where's the best case to
yeah.
place to go and use this? Go out and have conversations with people in these types of environment and get their feedback. It's customer discovery really. It's we think there's a problem here, so go and talk to some GPs. Are you solving a problem which is actually of value to them? And asking them if you could wave a magic wand around this sort of area. What is
And
the
what sort of things I mean, it's an interesting point about talking to GPs. I mean, what sort of things did they say? I mean, they must see lots of distressed people.
They do. They pretty much corroborated all of our hypotheses as well. They told us that basically on a daily basis, between 30 and 50% of all of their caseloads coming through are for mental health presentations, that they have
That's
an
that's
8 minute
important.
window. It's a huge amount. They can't afford to defer anybody till tomorrow because if somebody's getting close to tomorrow, you know that tomorrow may not happen.
Yeah.
When they speak to the patients, they only have really like an 8 to 10 minute window within which to have a very subjective conversation. And within that time, they've got to try and assess an individual as a whole, everything that's going on in their life, what's potentially driving these types of behaviors. Does this individual look like they might be prone to taking extreme drastic action, or do they just need to go home and just go for a walk and then they're going to feel better? I mean, who knows? All of this is just being done with little information, and at best, it's just a guess. And this is exactly where we can come in with that objective layer of biological data to really compound this. And more importantly, the patients really, from myself as being a patient, I want to know if something's wrong with me. There's got to be a biological reasoning behind this. It's not just because there's always something there. So you can have a proper diagnosis to see what's wrong with your body and what's going on with you. And now if we can show people that the brain biochemistry is off, it's out of sync, it's disrupted upon
Right.
these pathways, again, speaking to patients, they'd feel much more confident if they could have a diagnosis which would tell them that there is a physiological reason why they are feeling a specific way. Not to say that there aren't other socioeconomic factors
Hmm.
um, affecting these. Of course, there are, but we can now give them more confidence that there is also a biological reason behind why they are feeling a specific way.
Yeah, yeah, and that I guess will add real value. I mean, my assumption there is that that would add real value to GPs and help them do their job more effectively, you know, as well, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, because again, through the subjective only conversations, we hear that 45% of referrals from primary care to secondary care fail. simply because there's not enough evidence to support the case that the individual is truly needing that secondary care. And those that slip through the net, they can escalate, and we've had some horror stories about what does happen. So we need a way of bolstering this, giving the GPs and the primary care clinicians that absolute data so they can make a much more accurate and timely decision to make that referral to not refer. And they've got the biological based data to substantiate the evidence of that referral as well.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you about the flip side to that, which is about, I talk to a lot of CEOs, and pretty much every CEO I talk to says, I make a lot of mistakes. I get things wrong all the time. I mean, what's been your experience of getting it wrong on the journey that you've been on? Because there must have been a few things that have gone wrong, I'm presuming.
No, it's all been perfect. I don't make mistakes. No, absolutely. I think naivety sometimes has probably been the biggest thing I'd have to hold my hand up against. It's when you're first starting out, you're moving into a brave new world, right? You're stepping into areas of things that you're not that familiar with. Potentially, perhaps it's marketing, or it's going into that sort of commercial field. So you can be quick to trust people that they're guiding you on the right path to do the right thing for you to help you move the company forward. But that's not always the case. And what that's really taught me is to, and it's my commercial advisor Oliver Wiley who's really sort of pounded this lesson home for me, because watching him in action has been absolutely phenomenal. But it's to really do enough due diligence behind everybody that you want to engage with as a partner, as a team member. Really go and do the homework. It's all good and well judging things on a first case. Yes, this seems like a nice person. They say they're going to do the right thing by me. Okay, yeah, you can have some trust there, but it's really you've got to do your homework, because it, it's a tough world, and that's the biggest lesson I've learned is really do your homework.
Yeah. And what's been the biggest mistake that you've made?
Oy. On this pathway, assumptions. I think the biggest kind of mistake would be some assumptions that making or raising money is going to be easy. Now, it's not, and I think anybody will tell you this. And that's really quite tricky. You can de-risk and de-risk and de-risk a business proposition, but having enough data behind you and the right sort of forward-facing plan, business plan, go-to-market plan, getting everything, all of this information together is absolutely key before you can go out doing any sort of fundraising event. I kind of naively in the first instance thought, you can get a good idea, go talk to some people, and they'll think, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Let's give you some money, Rob, and let's get going. But yeah, it doesn't really work like that.
So how has it worked for you? Because you're on that journey, aren't you? I mean, what have you, I mean, if that's where you started, what do you do differently now?
Well, in retrospect, now we've done all the right things.
Okay.
I do them all much quicker, more efficiently, and do them all up front. But it's been a bit of a slow learning process. Well, not a slow learning process, learn very quickly. But it's a matter of knowing where to go, what things to do when you have those conversations with investors. Exactly what information and data do they really want to see to make the decision easy for them? De-risking everything, showing them precisely what your problem is, how you're going to solve this, why you've got how and why you have the right team to deliver this, and when you can start getting your revenues coming in. But having all of the right data behind you to get this,
Mm.
and doing the health economics up front is absolutely key. So having all this information to show that there is a market gap and how you can make money moving forward and get that ROI for your investors is absolutely paramount.
Yeah.
But from
Well,
all of my learnings like this, I'm really trying to pay a lot of this information forward as well to younger entrepreneurs and people coming out of university who are readily engaging with me and sort of setting on this pathway as well. So I want people to sort of learn from some of the pitfalls and the slower steps which we've made so that they don't make the same. I mean, we haven't made any catastrophic errors. There's been like bumps in the road. You learn as you go along.
mm,
But I think what I'm really trying to say is I'm trying as much as possible to engage with the next generation of entrepreneurs sort of coming through to help them learn the lessons which I have learned, but so it doesn't slow them down,
Mm.
and be available for them if they want to have conversations, and give them that sort of advice, coaching, and mentorship and support, basically, because I know from the get-go of coming up with an idea how lonely that is,
Mm.
sitting in your office thinking, is this a good idea? Is it not a good idea? Where do I go? What's the first thing I need to do? Do I need to put a patent on this straight away, or how do I develop this idea and move it forward? What's the
Which is
pathway?
nothing to do with the proposition in one sense, is it? It's to do with a whole load of stuff that's about how businesses work. It's nothing to do with what you're trying to, the people you're trying to help, or the technology you're trying to build, or anything like that, is it? Just a whole load of other stuff that comes with building a business.
Absolutely. And I didn't do an MBA. I'm a scientist by design and by trade. I was a molecular biologist for 25 years. So that's, I know how a lab works. I know how you set up
Mm.
build an SOP and how you can set up a drug discovery pipeline. But in terms of the whole business side of things, this is really where I've had to put all these other brilliant people in to support and fill those gaps.
And has as it were, has the business kind of at any point has it kind of grown beyond your um, personal expertise? I mean, is it? I mean, you just touched on stuff that you don't know about. Have you ever felt, oh God, the thing's kind of growing into this kind of monster that's going to kind of go and do its own thing? I mean, have you ever felt that it's kind of got out of control at all?
No, no, I don't. Because I do my homework, I do my research, and I've
Mm.
read up on everything, and having all the right conversations, surrounding myself with the right people too. So there's, as I said, there's areas that aren't my 100% expertise, but this is why you build a team of experts around you. As we're moving into other elements and other markets and other business propositions, again, it's doing the research, it's doing the reading before you're going to move in there. You don't jump in with 2 feet. You want to be fully aware of what the value is of doing this, what the risks are, and and troubleshooting this before you go in. So you always want to be thinking 6, 12 months down the line of where you could be, where this is going to take you. Is it worthwhile pursuing?
Mm.
So we've never found ourselves in any element of deep water.
Yeah, yet. I mean,
Yeah.
the other question I was going to ask was, so to get to where you want to get to, what do you think the big challenges are that you're going to have to overcome going forward? I mean, my guess is you've bitten off a huge piece. It's a huge ambition. What would you say is are the big challenges that you're going to have to overcome? I mean, you may not know how to overcome them yet, but what would you say those big challenges are?
A lot of the things which are sort of standing between us and the end goal are things actually we already have ethics being improved, and we've got lots of regulatory experts working with us as well. So it's getting through those hurdles, showing that we've satisfied all the right criteria. So we're already making really great roads with this as well. So it looks like we're well on track for that. Um, Uptake and selling, getting the product out there and into the market again. It's it's telling the right story and connecting with your end buyers and end users. But again, this has all been, you know, a really a really good experience so far. Again, through what we're trying to solve and what our mission is, it connects. We've got the emotional hook. People see the value in this, that we've really got something new and and disruptive that's now going to change the way that mental health triage can be done with objective biology. And it doesn't just stop in this sort of aspect. We've touched briefly on a couple of other um, marketable ways that this tool can be used, but that's only just one of 12 or so different ways that this can go into the market. So we really see it easy to connect with our customers as well, how they want to use the tool and the platform to benefit their business and move things forward.
Mm. Mm. And what would you say that you've learnt about decision making? I mean, has your view of effective decision making changed as you've been doing this?
It's given me a lot more confidence to make decisions and to trust myself more, that I do know a lot more than I give myself credit for. And going right back to what we were sort of talking about earlier on, it's sometimes working in a different industry whereby you're potentially not in the right groove, whereby I was sort of alluding to the fact that I feel like I've really now found
Mm.
where I should be going. This feels like it's the right fit for me, and it's being able to make those decisions. Yes, just being it's almost personal discovery without being a bit too sort of woo-woo about it. I just feel like this is the right sort of path for me to be moving along. And with that comes the confidence to be your sort of, oh, I hate to say it, but be your authentic self, to trust yourself, to have conversations with people, to admit when you don't know things, to ask questions and to have conversations, to be real. And again, it's a bit cliche, but people do business with people.
Mm.
And it's to be able to connect with people, I think. So that's really where I think my a lot of my decision making has leveled up. It's being able to trust myself to make the right decisions. If you're unsure of anything, again, it's having the right people around you to soundboard ideas from. And that usually sort of helps me make my mind up pretty quickly because I think usually within about 10 seconds of putting the idea to somebody, I can pretty much tell whether it's a good idea or not. As soon as the words leave your mouth, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's retract that. Thanks for your time. I already know the answer.
Yeah. It's a different experience building a business to being an employee, isn't it? And it's not about necessarily how hard you work. It's just it's a different process, I think.
I think you've got to be, yes, it certainly is. And I didn't really appreciate how much risk and how uncomfortable doing this could be. I mean, it's incredibly exciting. It's very fulfilling. Um, it certainly keeps you busy as well. It really makes you question what you're doing. Are you doing
Mm.
busy work or are you doing essential work? What's the most critical thing you can do every day
Yeah.
to put the business forward, to really move the needle, to create that next value inflection point, to get you closer to ticking all the boxes of what everybody's going to need before they're going to see you as being fully investable,
Mm.
to getting everybody's confidence in what you're doing. How do you do that? How do you connect with everybody? So I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been absolutely fantastic and I've enjoyed every moment of it. But I'd certainly say there's been quite a bit of an emotional roller coaster
Yeah,
along the way
it's hard. I
doing
mean, building a business is a tough gig, and is it? I mean, it's interesting what you were just saying as you were saying that. The thing that was going through my mind was it's about the ability to prioritize. I mean, you have to because you've got much more limited resources. If you work for a big organization, you want a financial plan, you go and see the finance guy, and he gives you a financial plan, and it doesn't work that way when you're in a small outfit. You've got to focus on working out what the right thing is to do today. What do I need to do today? And what can wait till tomorrow? What do I've got? And that process, I think, sharpens. I mean, my experience is it sharpens your thinking, forcing you to work out and to make those decisions about prioritization. I mean, they're really hard and they're very easy to get wrong, but ultimately, if you get them right, that's when you can really make progress.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all about that critical thinking, isn't it?
Mm.
And what I think is really interesting, sort of also to reply to that, is being able to delegate as well. Is that as a CEO, you don't have to do everything yourself. And I thought I would have had trouble with this potentially in
Right.
letting go and giving work packages to other people. But no, I actually thrive on it. If it's going to give me some more time back and it's going to
Mm.
save me some of my sort of mental anguish. And if somebody else who's better positioned to do something, let them go and do it. I'm not going to stand over somebody's shoulder and make sure they're doing it. As I said, surrounded myself with absolutely brilliant people. I trust them 100% to get on with what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They're better at it than me. So I'm more than happy for them to sort of run with this. So that
I
was
mean,
something I was interested to sort of see how I would have
yeah.
fared in this kind of role as I was taking on members of staff. But it's I think I've sort of gone to that like a duck to water really. It just makes sense. I think when you're making the right decisions like that, it doesn't even feel like you have to put too much effort and thought into it. There's no wrangling going on.
I think, I mean, listening to what you were saying, I mean, the thing that strikes me is it's also about understanding where you're the bottleneck.
Yes.
And if
Yeah.
you have a good understanding of where you're the problem, then you can get people to help you. But if you don't know that you're the problem, I mean, you just end up sort of on the hamster wheel, don't you? So it's quite a useful bit of insight, I think, which is very different from being an employee where you do X, Y, and Z. That's what you do. Whether one hopes that you enjoy it, but even if you don't, you do X, Y, and Z. It's different the role of the CEO, isn't it? Because you've got to work out what X, Y, and Z is.
And I think this is also it also pays testament to having picked the right team is when they have
Yeah.
confidence in you that you're the bottleneck as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
You
that's
need
also a
people
good
to
sign.
speak to you about that and to be open about that because you can't fix problems unless you know about them, can you?
No, exactly, exactly, and it's maintaining that sort of culture where everybody is free to sort of have that sort of push and pull.
Yeah. Let me ask you a couple of questions just before we wind up. So, if you were to go back to the beginning, I mean, is there anything, if you were starting from scratch, is there anything you'd do differently?
You know, I'd have to say really no, because everything that has happened to me on this journey has always resulted in something brilliant. It's been a
Mm,
connection to somebody who's been able to open more doors for me. It's filled in a knowledge gap, or even when we've partnered and those partnerships have ended, there's no regrets there because we've still had excellent value from it, and these have always been springboarding moments. So everything we've done has enabled us to learn and to grow. Absolutely no regrets. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are now.
That's really positive. And one final question. If you were to give some advice to a rookie CEO, I mean, what would that advice be?
Get yourself a mentor. Find somebody that has done it before, who has time for you, who can guide you in the right way, tell you that you're not mad, and also share your dream and your vision.
Mm,
Help nurture that. Because for me, in the early days, talking to Rajan, if I think if he hadn't have been around to I needed him there to validate what I was doing, to tell me
mm,
that it was a good idea, it is worth pursuing, and to have somebody in your corner to push you along like that, it's invaluable.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I mean, a good mentor can really. I mean, I think they also help you protect your own mental health, don't they?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of good mentors, and they've very, very valuable. I mean, they continue to be friends actually, even though we're not in a work relationship anymore. Incredibly valuable. Rob, thank you for making a bit of time to share that story. I mean, it's a really interesting proposition, and I love the ambition. I mean, I'm a huge believer in big ambition. I mean, most people that have big ambitions don't achieve them, but that's not the point. The point is trying, isn't it? And you might. If you aim for the stars, you might get to the moon, as they say. So, I
I,
mean, thanks for coming and sharing that.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And just to comment to that, I mean, I'd rather fail spectacularly than have never tried and gone absolutely
Yeah,
nowhere. But I think for from what we've building, from the traction and the validation we've had so far, we're on the right track. So let's continue to keep those
good
fingers
stuff.
crossed.
Fingers crossed, then.
Absolutely.
All
All
right,
right.
see you soon, Rob. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye bye.